All right, Jordan. Last segment of the night. Deion Sanders has been in the news cycle quite a bit in the last week. He met with media members and had some comments about the spring game and what his vision of the future of spring games looks like in college football. And he had a lot of interesting comments to say about it. Ultimately, basically, what he wants or what he envisions is partnering with other teams, other universities, bringing them out to his facility, doing joint practices like they do in the NFL for 3 days, and then ending with a spring game. The two teams going up against each other where the fans are in the stadium, and it's more like a college football Saturday game than a spring game. So those were kind of his thoughts. I know he pointed out North Carolina. I know Syracuse's coach reached out on social media or had something to say on social media about he's game for it. Ultimately, I don't know that it is currently legal as far as the NCAA rules go to do that. But just talking about the possibility of this happen, Jordan. So let's explore this for a couple minutes. What are your thoughts? Would you like to see the future of spring games become a kind of a home and home series with teams, or just bringing a smaller in-state school up to do some joint practice and then ultimately end in a spring game? What are your thoughts on what Deion had to say and the potential of what could come out of this and be possibly the future of spring games? You know, in a world of college football where there's a growing list of universities canceling spring games because they're worried about tampering. Luckily for us, the Clemson Tigers are not canceling, nor do they plan to do so in the future. But this is certainly an interesting topic to talk about and get the comments thoughts. So your thoughts, Jordan?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's something that's been floated out. Deion's not the first to kind of talk about it, but I think he's the first to, want another Power 4 school that I can remember. I'd be all for it. I don't know if it would become a trend, so to speak. And yeah, like you said, I'm not sure it's legal. But I think with the fear from a lot of coaches about players getting poached and stuff like that, it's kind of, especially if you're playing another Power 4 school, you're kind of opening yourself up, I guess. That's probably the logic they would use, but I would be cool with it. It would be something I think it would be great for fan engagement, and it'd be fun to. It kind of like in basketball has exhibition games and things like that. Obviously, football logistically, it takes a lot more to put together a football game, and but if two schools wanted to do it, I don't see a reason to bar them from it. So, and I'd definitely watch it. It'd be something, especially in a time where there is no football on. So, I like I said, I'd be all for it. I don't know if I would want Clemson necessarily to participate. I guess it depends on what the opponent is and all of that. Because again, I don't want I want it in a way that you're not playing your starters and stuff like that. I do worry about injuries, but I think that's the only thing.
Yeah. My kind of thoughts on the possibility of this is I really kind of like it. And I've thought about it over the last day or so. And I get, so some of the arguments out there are obviously first thing people are going to go to are the first two things is poaching players and then injuries, right? Those are going to be the major talking points for a lot of people. Or the opposition to having live spring games against a real opponent. Poaching players, I mean, I don't know what we do about that in college football, but I'm of the opinion that it's not a good reason not to have a spring game. I think the spring game is huge for the fan base. I think it's huge for just kind of the team as well. You do create some semblance of a game time atmosphere being in your stadium with, at least some fans there making noise. It does feel a little bit different, I'm sure, from a player standpoint. Now, as far as playing another opponent, I would like to see it be, sort of like, your cupcake games in the season, right? So bring in one of your smaller FCS teams from in-state, like a Citadel or a Charleston Southern or, a school like that, and bring them in, pay them, some amount of money, do some joint practice, and then ultimately into the spring game. I hear the argument for injuries, and I mean, that's all well and good, but you have just as much, if not more, injury risk doing an inter-squad scrimmage. So I get the injury piece, but this is football. Guys get injured, and I don't think playing against one of your smaller in-state schools is going to increase your risk of injury. What's the difference in going up against the Citadel's defense versus going up against your defense? Like, is there really any more of a risk for injury? I don't think so. It's just like any other scrimmage, and you could tailor it that way. It doesn't have to be a quote unquote legitimate game, but just seeing your guys go up against players that they are not familiar with, right, I think would be a big benefit, especially when you're talking about not playing as many starters and getting those depth guys a bunch of reps. Why not get them reps against players that they're not familiar with? I think it could be really beneficial. I think it could be huge for, fan engagement. I think you can make a lot of money off of it as a university. Obviously, to make up some of the money, you might have to charge a small fee to get in. And I know, we don't want to hear that for a spring game. But you could make it a small $10 fee, to get in for the spring game and make it this big type of event where, not only do the fans come and get engaged, and you probably get more people coming to because there's an opponent there, but you also get some real live work. I personally like the idea. I don't know about Power 4 on Power 4.
Yeah. That's kind of my thing.
I would definitely be in favor of bringing a smaller in-state school in, giving them, whatever amount of money it is to come in, have a couple practices, and ultimately end in a spring game where the fans can come out and watch. And you could televise it, you could not televise it. I don't really care. But I think it definitely has benefits to it. Will it ever catch on? I don't know. Because the current world of college football that we live in, people can't even scrimmage themselves because of they're too tired from the season or injuries or somebody's going to come take my players or, just a litany of excuses as to why these guys can't go play football when they're football players. It's just crazy to me, but whatever. I'm Team Dion on this one. Let's make it happen. I don't know why that you can't have joint practices in college football. Like, that makes no sense. Why can you not have joint practice with some team during spring ball? Like, I don't understand why that's even a problem with the NCAA. But again, nothing ever makes sense with the NCAA.
Yeah,
so
rules just to have rules. That's
just my thoughts on it. I'd be excited for it. I would certainly watch it anytime I get a chance to watch football, especially if it's Clemson football. I'm watching. So I saw a couple of our commenters in here mention that the spring game will not be televised. That is true. Clemson spring game will not be televised this year. So if you're going to see the spring game, you're going to have to go to the spring game.